All right, so back to the story of the submarine. Now, my father, as I said, went and bought these monster hooks, and he bought winch cable, for a boat winch, and he made this big trace up. The cable was like 10 meters long, and this big hook on the end of it, and he still attached the black float to the top of the trace, and then obviously the line from the rod went onto the black float as well. And I think it might have actually been the very next weekend, the same week that my father went and made this trace up. From what I remember, we were at sea the next weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. Anyway, so on the boat that day is my dad, it's myself, it's my best friend Devin Gillespie, and it is one of the guys working for my father, Trevor Grant. So we head back down to Macassar Beach. Early in the morning, we launch at 6 o'clock in the morning. We get to Macassar Beach, put down a couple of hooks, and we catch, again, red stump nose. So my dad takes two, because the hooks are big now, he takes two red stump nose and he puts it onto the hook. But now he's got clever as well, and he's coiled about 6 meters of the cable, and he's connected it with thin copper wire and is hanging just below the float. So these fish, the bait is only like 2 meters, 3 meters below the float. And his idea now is that when the shark comes, the submarine comes in and grabs the bait, it snaps the little copper cables, which leaves slack in the water, cable in the water, slack, which gives the submarine time to swallow the bait and get a decent hook. And it sounds terrible, it's terribly cruel, but you want to hook the shark as deep as possible. You want to try and hook it in the gills, because that's how you're going to kill the shark in the shortest time possible. You hook in the mouth and the jaw, and something the size of the submarine, you're sitting there for hours trying to stop this animal. Anyway, we get out there and we fishing and we chatting, and about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the submarine rocks up. We're sitting there and it just suddenly comes up, boom, same place. And she comes to the surface and she swims around the boat, and everybody's just like, wow, wow. And Devin, my best friend, didn't even like fishing. He didn't want to be on the ocean. He hated fishing, but because we were best mates, he used to go out with us. But even Devin was just blown away, and he's like, wow, great, look how big it is. Uncle Theo, look how big the shark is. My dad's name, Theo. But any case, we were all on, and we had our jobs to do. And eventually the sub comes up and takes the bait, and she takes off. And she snaps those little cables. There's a little bit of slack in the water. She obviously gets the hook into her mouth somewhere, and the tip of the hook hooks her, which obviously inflicts pain, and the submarine takes off. Boom. And by that time, my dad's already in the fighting chair. He's all clipped in. He's got the leather harness on, and it's game on. And the shark just takes off. And again, this barrel goes shooting across the surface of the water, and then just disappears like a submarine. Yeah. So it disappears in this bubble and foam, and it's like a submarine shooting under the water, following the real shark, the submarine. And so I get behind the wheel, because I know how to handle a boat. I start the engines. Trevor Grant goes to the front of the boat and he pulls the anchor up, and now we fight in the submarine. And my dad's laying into it. And as I say, he's just giving the instructions. My dad just says, more this way, faster, whatever, because every once in a while the sub will take off and start running, and you see that spool just getting smaller and smaller. So then you have to power after the shark and try and get to the side of the shark, or even around to the front of the shark, and get the shark to turn again. So you keep in a shark in one spot, like two boxes in a ring almost. So we fight in the shark, we fight in the submarine, and we were into the fight for about an hour and a half. And these big marlin rods, they don't have normal eyes where the line runs through. They got these roller eyes where the line runs through, because there's so much pressure on them. But we fight in the shark, and my dad's sweating and he's leaning into this, and we feeding him Coca-Colas and water and all sorts of things. And at one point, he's pulling back on the rod, and suddenly the rod just jerks backwards, and it almost hits him in the face. But it has got a stopper, and if it wasn't for the stopper, where the rod is in the gimbet, the butt of the rod, that rod would have hit him in the face and broken his nose or something. So it just snaps back like that, boom, and the line is off. The line snaps right on the front roller eye, and somehow that roller eye had seized during that 1.5 hour fight. And I think the heat buildup of the line or the Dacron over the steel that wasn't turning anymore burned through the Dacron or something, but it snapped. So my father's, oh, for fuck's sakes, and he's so, everybody, we're all disappointed because we fight in the submarine, and you can't explain it to people. You can't explain what it's like to be at war with something the size of this animal. And the adrenaline and the excitement on board, and the unknowing, and there's this feeling of danger all the time. So anyway, it snaps, and your first thought is we've lost the submarine, because now the shark's been underwater. It's been underwater with that 20-liter drum for that float for 1.5 hours now. So you can imagine the pressure of that float pulling on that shark, and how big that animal must be to just keep it under the water. So I say to my dad, hey, but Dad, the shark still got the float on it. And my dad clicks, and he says, oh. So fortunately it's a day like this, even calmer than this. And my dad shouts to everybody, okay, everybody, eyes out, eyes peeled. I want to see where the shark is, because she's going to have to come up at some point. Now, when the line snapped, she was about 600 meters from the boat. So that's already pretty far to see a float this size on the water. And now we don't know where she is. She should be going that way, or she could be going that way, whatever. But eventually, probably about 20 minutes later, this little black blip comes up to the surface, and one of us notices it. I can't remember who. And way out there, we see this little black spot on the surface, and we know it's a submarine. So we go rushing over with the boat, and what we've done now, we've taken a rope and we've made a lasso, because the idea is that when we get to the float, we're going to throw the lasso over the float, and then we're going to fight the shark with a rope. So we rush over to where the float is, and obviously when we're coming up towards the float, we're like 30 meters away, so we slow down, and it's this weird, ominous feeling, because the float looks like it's got a life of its own, and it's moving around on the surface of the water like this. And we know that below that floats this giant 24-foot great white shark, the submarine. So we edge up to the float, and we're probably about 3, 4, 5 meters from the float. And my dad's at the control, and Trevor's got the lasso, and my dad's telling Trevor, wait, I'll tell you when to do it. And next thing, the float just goes, it's gone again. And that float disappears for another 45 minutes. And we're just idling around in big circles, and eventually it comes up somewhere. This time it's a bit closer. Same story. We get to the float, we get to a few meters of it, and gone again. So now the shark has been fighting us for 3 hours almost, and holding the float under the water most of the time. But obviously it's so much stress on the animal that eventually it comes to the surface, and it helps it rest. So I think it was on the third or fourth occasion, the float comes to the surface. We go over, and we actually get right up to the float. So we idle right up to the float, and the float bumps the side of the boat like doof, doof. And you know, we all of us, the hearts are in our throat, and the adrenaline's there again. And my dad actually takes the lasso from Trevor, and he just leans over and he throws it over the float, and he lassos the float, not around the float, but actually over the neck of right down to the bottom, and he lassos that float. And he just lets the boat drift, and the float just keeps drifting out like that. And the water visibility that day wasn't that great, so we couldn't see the sub under the water. And the float starts moving away, because the shark's moving away from the boat like that. And my dad starts paying out rope, and eventually pays out about 30 meters of rope. And then he cleats it to the side of right where he's standing. So he's standing at the controls here, and he cleats, a cleat is this, like right over here. And he cleats the rope to the boat. and you can actually feel the tension taken up by the sub, and the boat starts listing to the side like that, and the shark is now pulling the boat to the water. So now the idea is to just keep pressure on the shark and fight the shark with the boat. But you don't want to give too much pressure, because then you have the chance of ripping the hook out. We don't know how the shark is hooked. So it starts pulling us across the water like that, and we list in, and everybody's fine. And next thing, we stop listing, and the boat comes back onto an even keel. And that float starts coming back towards the boat. And as it comes towards the boat, it starts accelerating towards the boat. Just like Jaws, just like the movie Jaws. And next thing, we look in there and we see this animal coming up. We see the submarine coming up. And you see the white over here on the bottom of the jaw. And she's coming up, and now she's decided to kill the boat, because she's obviously associated the boat with whatever is attacking her and tormenting her. So she's going into protective mode. And she comes up like that, and we think she's actually going to smash into the boat with her jaw. And at the last second, she goes under the boat. And she goes right under the boat, and you actually hear the float bang the boat. The float goes like doof, doof, as it goes under the boat. And now the shark's going off like that, at high speed. So my father is afraid that when the rope pulls tight, it could actually capsize the boat, pull the boat upside down. So what he does, he hits the gas to try and spin the boat around. So he hits the two engines into gear. He's trying to spin the boat around like this. But unbeknown to us, the shark is now turned, and she's coming back at the boat. And as the boat powers up, as those propellers power up to turn the boat around, the propellers pick up the cable. So let this helicopter go past quickly. This helicopter actually helps us out looking for sharks very often. Anyway, so my dad powers around, and as he powers around, the cable from the trace gets wound up in the two engines, and the engines are going like wow, and they just seize up like that, and there's just a complete balls up of biblical proportions at the back of the boat now, because now all the cables wrapped around two engines is wound up tight as piano wire, and there's about 2 meters of cable left, which is attached to this big submarine, this shark that wants to kill us now, because we're trying to kill it. And now we're in the shit. We're seriously in the shit. We don't know what to do about it. So my dad trims the engines up, power trims them up. And now the shark's just at the back of the boat like this. And now we can see the two sides of this beast. It's literally as wide as the boat. It's 1.8 meters wide. And it's just drifting off the back of the boat like that. So my dad trims the motors up. And it's just a mess. The cable's so caught up in those two engines and the propellers, there's no ways you can do anything about it. So he trims the motors down again. And as the motors go down, the submarine just surges forward and smashes into the back of that boat. She just, and the sound, the whole boat reverberates, and actually almost knocks us off our feet. Because you've got a boat that weighs a ton, and you've got a great white shark that weighs 4 or 5 tons. And the shark just smashes into the back of that boat, like lifts the back of the boat out the water, and she bites down, and you can hear her teeth grinding through the glass fiber, and some of her teeth are snapping off, and she gets a grip on something, and she starts shaking from side to side, and the whole boat is shaking and rolling. Then she lets go, and she comes in again, and she grabs one of the engines. I can't remember if it was the port or the starboard engine. It was the port engine. She grabs the gearbox in the port engine, and she bites it, and she twists so hard that she snaps the whole engine off its mountings. So now the engine's lying skew like that. And then she starts shaking, and with the cable, the engine's going quah, quah. So the engine's almost going into the freaking water. So now it's panic stations. We panic and we're shitting ourselves. At this point, Devin, my friend, he is in total panic mode. He's screaming, Craig, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. We got to get out of here. We're going to die. And my dad just shouts to Devin, get into the cabin, because we had a small cabin on the front of this boat. So Devin dives into the cabin. And I remember at this point, and this is one of the clearest things I remember, I actually looked to shore. The shore was twice as far as we are now from shore. We're about 1.5 kilometers out at sea. And I looked ashore and I thought to myself, I'm never going to see my mother again. That's what actually went through my head. I thought we're dead. So the submarine eventually settled down again. And then she settled down for a minute and a half, and then she'd go at us again, and she'd smash. And she ripped off the transducer unit off the back of the boat, the speeder unit. The one engine was just about falling off the back of the boat. She just went ballistic. And at one point, so the boat's there and she's there. This is the back of the boat. She's there and every time she tries to swim away, the boat stops her. So she tries to swim and then doof, she starts dragging the boat. Then she tries to swim this way and then the boat stops again. So eventually she just keeps going and she comes up level with the boat. Like side on with the boat like this. So she's swimming away and she drags the boat next to her body. And this is when we really saw that she was 7 meters long, because her tail was at the bow at that point. Her tail was at the bow, and well, not right at the bow. It was probably about a meter before the bow, plus minus, and I'll tell you why. So the tail was about a meter forward of the bow, but you must remember her snout is pretty long, and the cable is about 2 meters of cable that was coming out of her mouth. So her head was way past the back of the boat. Her snout was probably 2.5 to 3 meters past the stern of the boat. And her tail was about a meter before the bow of the boat. And she rolled. No, first of all, she started diving. And at first she couldn't get traction, so because she's battling, but she gets traction eventually and she starts diving and she pulls the arse of the boat, the stern of the boat, under the water. And as she pulls it under the water, water is coming onto the deck, and as more water comes on the deck, the boat becomes heavier and easier for her to pull under. And eventually we all stand in not knee-deep water, but water up to here on the deck of the boat. Sorry about that, but I shall carry on. So she pulls the back of the boat under the water, and we're really panicking because she's basically sinking us. We are actually sinking. And the boat starts listing like this and listing like that. And in my mind, I think we're going to go upside down. And then fortunately, she stops. She stops her momentum and the boat comes back onto a keel, but she's still swimming, and then she rolls. And as she rolls, her tail comes out the water and smashes the cabin window right in the front of the cabin of the boat. And that is why we know that her tail was about a meter this side of the bow, because it hit the cabin window, cracked the cabin window, smashed it out. Devon comes flying out the cabin. He literally comes bolting out of the cabin, and he's crying, and he's just screaming, "Craig, I want to go home, Uncle Theo, I want to go home, we're going to die." And he stands there and he pees himself. He says, "Craig, I'm peeing myself, I wet myself." And you can't blame the guy. I mean, he's 12 or 13 years old, we're kids. So now we don't know what to do. We're really in trouble, and our boat's basically been taken apart by the submarine. So my dad puts out a mayday, and he gets on the radio and he says, "Mayday, mayday," you know. And there's a boat that's a mile or so further out to sea from us. We can just see it out there. And this boat comes on the line. Vessel calling mayday, vessel calling mayday. No, who are you? So my dad says we're about 1.5 kilometers off the water tower, almost directly off the water tower. That is where we are. So the guy radios back. He says, "Okay, I can see you. I'm straight out to sea, also off the water tower, but I'm probably 1.5 miles away from you. What's your problem?" So my dad said, "Listen, my friend, just get your ass over here now. We're in serious trouble. Don't ask questions." So they started coming over, and we could see this boat coming over towards us. And I went to the bow of the boat, and I got a rope ready. And when they got to us, the plan was to throw them a rope and they could tow us. So eventually they get to us and they slow down, and what they arrive to is this giant shark smashing the back of our boat to pieces. And our boat's like listing, and then the arse is under the water, the shark's rolling, the ocean's becoming froth, and they're looking at us, and my dad shouts, "Guys, just take a rope, you got to tow us." So they come past us, and I throw them the rope, and they tie it off, and they start towing us, and they say to my dad on the radio, how fast do you want us to tow? My dad says, just pull us at about 5 knots, 6 knots, just let's see how it goes. So they start pulling us like that. So it's them, it's us, and then there's a submarine. And we start heading towards Gordons Bay Harbor. And Jesus, the adrenaline starts fading, you know, and at that point, what I really remember is that my throat was dry as chalk, and everybody's was. We were all so freaked out that we could hardly swallow. So my dad shouts, "We need cool drinks." So we're grabbing cool drinks, we're drinking cool drinks, and we're all calming down, and we realize we're elated. We start giggling, and we're not going to die this day, and we've actually captured the submarine. A very unorthodox manner, but we've actually captured the biggest great white shark in the ocean, as far as we knew. So we pulled it to the water for probably about 4 kilometers, probably 2 miles. We pulled it to the water, and she kind of just went along behind us. And then suddenly the boat started shuddering, and she started rolling again. And my dad tried to shout to the guys to stop. But before they stopped, everything stopped. And the boat sort of launched forward. And what had happened, the shark had rolled, and with the pressure of them pulling us to the water and the submarine resisting, because now she had got, you know, oxygen and water through her gills, so she had been able to rest and probably built up some energy, and she broke loose. So we pulled the drum in. It was only 2 meters behind the boat. We pulled the cable in, and that huge hook, that massive hook, wasn't bent straight like that, but it was bent like that. And the shark had escaped us again. I hate to think about the damage it did, but it obviously hooked her in the jaw or near the jaw or something like that again. But she bent that hook open, and she escaped. So then we managed to untangle the cable and everything, and we limped back to harbor with one engine. And it was all over the newspapers, you know, monster shark tows False Bay boat. We were in the newspapers a lot. There was anti-submarine warfare in False Bay, monster shark tows False Bay boat, 2 out to get the submarine, in all the headlines, this kind of thing, because it just built up and built up. But anyway, that's the end of that part of the story of the submarine, and that's when we almost lost our lives to that animal. And the thing is, the shark, like in Jaws, the shark wasn't attacking us. It was just defending itself, completely defending itself. But we saw the submarine again. We saw the submarine on a 3rd occasion. Actually, we saw it 2 more occasions. I'll quickly tell you the 3rd occasion we saw. The 3rd occasion, we were out there fishing for her, and nothing happened for the whole day. We didn't see one shark. So we pulled all the fishing gear in, and my dad got behind the wheel, started the engines, and as we started moving forward, the submarine breached out the water. The whole submarine breached right out the water like that in front of the boat, and almost teasing us in a way. It was very strange, but that's what happened. And then we saw the submarine a 3rd time, but that will be another story. So stick around for the next adventure into the life of the submarine.